The Mafia boss took her in. A cold-hearted man, a woman with nothing left, and a garden full of secrets. What starts as an act of twisted honor becomes a deadly gamble. Can love grow in the shadow of his dangerous empire, or will it get them both killed? If you're new here, subscribe and comment your location. Now let's begin. The rain hit the windows of the big, dark mansion like tiny bullets. Inside, Don Alessandro sat in his study. The room was quiet, but his mind was loud with old, bad memories. He looked at his hands. They were clean now, but he could still feel the blood. He got up and walked to the big window. He looked out at his garden. It was overgrown and wild, full of weeds and broken branches. It was the only place that felt quiet to him, a mirror of his own soul. A loud knock on the front door broke the silence. It wasn't a friendly knock. It was scared and fast. Alessandro frowned. His men, David and James, were already moving to the door. He walked slowly into the grand hallway. David opened the door. There stood their neighbor, Mr. Peterson. He was a small, nervous man who always smelled like cheap cologne. Next to him was a young woman. She was soaked from the rain. She had a small, wet suitcase at her feet. She wasn't looking at anyone. She was staring at the ground, shaking. "Don Alessandro, so sorry to bother you." Mr. Peterson's voice was too high. "There's been a mix-up. This is Alina. She was supposed to be for me. A mail-order bride, you see. But my wife. She came back. She wasn't supposed to come back. I can't take her, please, just for a night or two. I don't know what to do." Alessandro looked at the woman, Alina. She seemed to shrink under his gaze. He felt a cold anger, not at her. At this weak, pathetic man who would bring a person across the world and then throw her away like trash. It was dishonorable. In Alessandro's world, you took care of what was yours, even if you didn't want it. "Get in," Alessandro said, his voice a low growl, "before you both drown." Mr. Peterson pushed the suitcase inside and practically ran back to his house without another word. The woman, Alina, stood frozen in the doorway, water dripping on the expensive marble floor. David and James looked at their boss. "What should we do with her, Don?" James asked. Alessandro sighed. He felt tired. "Put her in the east guest room, the one that doesn't face the street. Give her dry clothes, something to eat." He turned to walk away, then stopped. He looked back at her. "You are safe here for now." That was all he said, before he went back to his study. In the morning, Alessandro came down for breakfast. The house was quiet. He expected the woman to be hiding in her room, but she wasn't. He walked into the large dining room and she was there. She was sitting at the far end of the long table, wearing a simple dress one of the staff must have given her. She was eating a piece of toast very slowly. She looked up when he entered. Her eyes were wide and green like the leaves after rain. She looked scared, but not broken. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was soft with a light accent. Alessandro just nodded. He sat at the head of the table. His man, Paul, brought him coffee and the newspaper. The silence was thick. "Thank you," Alina said after a minute. "For letting me stay. I did not know. I did not know he had a wife." "It is not your fault," Alessandro said, not looking up from his paper. "He is a fool." "Your garden," Alina said suddenly. "It is very big and very sad." Alessandro put his paper down. He looked at her. "Sad." "Yes," she said, meeting his eyes for the first time. "The roses are choked by weeds. The fountain has no water. The fruit trees are not pruned. Everything is trying to live, but it is forgotten. It makes me sad to see it." Alessandro was stunned. No one had ever said something like that to him. People talked about his cars, his house, his power, never about the sadness of his garden. "You know about gardens?" he asked. "I was a botanist. In my country, I studied plants," she said. A flicker of pride showed in her eyes, then it faded. "Before I came here." Alessandro drank his coffee. An idea came to him. It was a strange idea. "The garden, it was my mother's. She loved it. It has been forgotten since she died." He paused. "If you are bored, you may look at it. Do not go past the stone wall." He didn't know why he said it. Maybe to give her something to do. Maybe to see if she was telling the truth. Her face changed. A real smile touched her lips. It was like the sun coming out. "Really, I would like that very much." That afternoon, Alessandro watched from his study window. Alina walked into the overgrown garden. She didn't seem scared anymore. She touched the leaves of a rose bush gently. She knelt down and looked at the soil. She pulled a few small weeds, her movements careful and sure. He told David to give her some old gardening tools from the shed. He didn't think much more of it. But the next day he saw her again, and the next. She started working in one small corner. She cleared the weeds. She trimmed the bushes. She talked to the cook, Lucy, and got some seeds and fertilizer. A week later, Alessandro was walking outside to meet with his men by the cars. He passed the corner where Alina worked. He stopped. It was different. The roses were free. The soil was dark and rich. New green plants were growing in neat little rows. It was just a small patch, but it was alive. It was beautiful. Alina was there, her hands dirty, her hair tied back. She was humming. "You have done this?" Alessandro asked. She jumped a little, then smiled. "Yes, it is a start. This soil is good. It just needed care." Alessandro looked at the clean patch, then at the rest of the wild garden. "It looks nice," he said, the word feeling strange in his mouth. "Would you like to help?" Alina asked. Alessandro almost laughed. Don Alessandro helping in the garden. His men would think he had gone crazy. "I have business," he said. "Maybe another time," she said, turning back to her plants. The days turned into weeks. A strange routine began. Alessandro would handle his business. He would meet with his captains, Mark and Daniel. They would talk about money, about territory, about problems with a rival group led by a man named Victor. It was a world of threats and deals and violence. Then he would come home, and he would find Alina in the garden. Her corner grew bigger and bigger. She asked him questions. "Where did your mother plant the lilies? Do you like herbs? I can grow some for the kitchen." Slowly, he started to answer. He started to join her for a few minutes in the evenings. He didn't garden, but he would stand and watch. He liked listening to her talk about plants. It made the noise in his head stop. One evening, he was sitting on a stone bench. Alina was planting something nearby. "This one is called forget-me-not," she said. "It is a small, brave flower." "I do not forget things," Alessandro said, his voice dark. "I wish I could." Alina sat back on her heels. "Some things are good to remember. Some things are like weeds. You must pull them out so the good things can grow." He looked at her, really looked. Her face was smudged with dirt. Her eyes were kind. "You are not what I expected," he said. "What did you expect?" she asked. "A scared rabbit, a broken thing." Alina smiled a little. "I was scared, the first day, but I am not broken, I decided. I will not let what happened break me. I will grow like these plants, no matter where I am planted." Her words hit Alessandro in a place he thought was dead. He felt something, a tug, a feeling he had not felt in years. One night there was trouble. A deal went bad. One of Alessandro's men, a young guy named Tony, was shot. They brought him to the mansion because they couldn't go to a hospital. Alessandro's personal doctor was there, but it was messy. There was blood on the hallway floor. Alessandro was angry. His suit jacket was off, his sleeves rolled up. He was giving orders, his voice like thunder. He was the Don again, hard, cold. Alina came out of her room, hearing the noise. She saw the blood. She saw the fear on the young man's face. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She went to the kitchen. She came back with a bowl of warm water and clean cloths. She didn't ask. She just started helping the doctor, holding things, cleaning away blood that wasn't from the wound. Alessandro watched her. In the middle of his violent world, she was calm. She was not part of it, but she was not afraid of it. Later, when it was over and Tony was stable, Alessandro found Alina in the kitchen. She was washing her hands, scrubbing hard. "You should not have seen that," he said, his voice rough. "It is your life," she said simply, not turning around. "I live in your house. I do not close my eyes to it." "Why did you help?" he asked. She turned to face him. Her eyes were serious. "Because he was in pain. It is the same reason I help the plants. It is not so different." To her, it wasn't. To Alessandro, it changed everything. She saw the blood and didn't see a criminal. She saw a person in pain. That night, he couldn't sleep. He went down to the garden. The moon was bright. He saw Alina's little plants, neat and peaceful. He heard a sound behind him. It was Alina. She wore a robe over her nightdress. "I could not sleep either," she said. They stood in silence for a moment. "Tell me about your mother's garden," Alina said softly. So he did. For the first time in 10 years, he talked about his mother. He told Alina how she would spend all day out here, how she grew food for the table, how she said plants could feel love. He talked and talked. The words came out like a flood. Alina listened. She didn't say much, she just listened. When he finished, he felt empty, but a good empty, like a poison had been drained. "Thank you," he whispered. "Come," Alina said. She took his hand. Her hand was small and warm in his. He let her lead him to the stone bench. They sat together, not talking, just looking at the garden in the moonlight. Alessandro held her hand and did not let go. For the first time since he could remember, he felt a quiet peace. He felt hope. He knew then, this was not just a garden she was healing. After that night, things changed. Alessandro and Alina grew closer. They ate dinner together every night. They walked in the garden. He told her about his childhood. She told him about her home, her studies, her dream of having her own greenhouse. He never told her the details of his business. She never asked, but she knew. She saw the serious men who came and went. She heard the quiet, tense phone calls. One day, Alessandro came home with a small, pretty box. He found Alina cutting herbs. "For you," he said, handing her the box. She opened it. Inside was a pair of fine leather gardening gloves. They were beautiful and practical. "It is too much," she said, but her eyes shone. "It is not enough," Alessandro said. He reached out and touched her cheek. "Nothing I could give you would be enough, Alina." He leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle at first. Then it was not gentle. It was full of all the feeling he had locked away for years. She kissed him back, her hands gripping his arms. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "I love you, Alina," Alessandro said. The words surprised him, but he knew they were true. "I love you, Alessandro," she said, "even with your thorns." He laughed, a real deep laugh. He hugged her tight, right there in the dirt of the garden. Alessandro was happy. He started to make plans. He talked to his lawyer about making Alina a legal citizen. He thought about how he could make his business more legitimate for her. He dreamed of a future. His men saw the change in him. They were careful around Alina. They respected her. They called her Miss Alina. They saw she was good for the boss, but they also worried. A happy Don was a softer target. The rival boss, Victor, heard the rumors. "Alessandro has a woman," Victor told his men, a cruel smile on his face. "A little gardener he saved. This is interesting. A man with something to lose is a man who can be beaten." Victor started watching. He had a man take pictures. Pictures of Alessandro and Alina walking in the garden. Pictures of them laughing. It was proof of Alessandro's weakness. One sunny afternoon, Alessandro had to go to a meeting across town. He kissed Alina goodbye. "Stay inside the walls today," he said. He had a bad feeling. "I will," she promised. "I am repotting the lemon tree." Alessandro left with David and James. The meeting was a trap. Victor's men ambushed them in an alley. It was a fierce, short fight. Alessandro was shot in the arm. David was hurt badly. They fought their way out and drove back to the mansion, tires screeching. But it was a distraction. While Alessandro was fighting in the alley, 2 of Victor's men climbed over the back garden wall. Alina was there, her hands in the soil. She saw them and froze. "Hello, little gardener," one of them said. "You are coming with us. The boss wants to meet you." Alina ran. She ran toward the house, but they were faster. One grabbed her arm. She screamed and fought, scratching his face. Lucy, the cook, heard the scream from the kitchen window. She saw the men. She didn't think. She grabbed the big kitchen phone and hit the panic button Alessandro had installed, a direct alert to all his men. At that moment, Alessandro's car crashed through the front gates. He saw the strange car parked near the garden wall. He saw the open back door. He heard Alina's scream. His heart turned to ice. Then it turned to fire. He didn't care about his bleeding arm. He pulled his gun. "Find her!" he roared to his men. "Now!" He ran to the garden. He saw the trampled plants. He saw Alina's new gardening gloves on the ground. Rage, black and terrible, filled him. This was his home. This was his love. Then his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It was a picture. Alina, her face pale, sitting in a dark room. Then a text. "You took something from me, Alessandro. Now I have something from you. Let's talk. The old warehouse. Dock 7. Come alone, or the gardener dies." It was from Victor. Alessandro stared at the picture. Alina looked scared, but she also looked angry. She was not crying. She was a fighter. His men gathered around him. Mark, Daniel, Paul, all of them were ready for war. "Boss, we go in guns blazing. We get her back," Mark said. Alessandro thought. The old Alessandro would have done that. He would have started a war that would get many people killed, maybe Alina too. But Alina had taught him about patience, about care, about protecting what was precious. "No," Alessandro said, his voice deadly calm. "He wants me to come alone. He wants me to be reckless. He wants to kill me and keep her or use her to make me give up everything." "So what do we do?" Daniel asked. Alessandro looked at the picture on his phone. He looked at the garden Alina had brought back to life. He made a decision, the hardest decision of his life. "I will go," he said, "but not alone, and not for a war, for a trade." "A trade? What can we trade?" Paul asked. Alessandro looked at his men. "Everything." Alessandro went into his study. He moved a painting on the wall. Behind it was a safe. He opened it. Inside were papers, deeds to properties, bank account numbers, lists of names, the entire blueprint of his empire. He took out a thick, black ledger. This book held every secret, every deal, every payment that could put not only him, but Victor and half the city's underworld in prison for life. His men watched, their faces shocked. "Boss, no," James whispered. "That's your life, that's all our lives." "It is paper," Alessandro said, his voice flat. "Alina is my life. He wants my empire. He can have the proof of it. I will trade this ledger for her. Once she is safe, then we will see." "But he will kill you both," Mark argued. "He won't just let you walk away." "He will if he thinks he has already won," Alessandro said. A plan was forming in his mind. It was risky. It was stupid. But it was the only way. "Listen carefully. This is what we will do." The old warehouse at Dock 7 was dark and smelled of fish and oil. Water dripped from the rusty ceiling. Alessandro walked in alone, just as Victor asked. He wore a simple black coat. The ledger was in a bag in his hand. His gun was tucked in the back of his pants. Lights flickered on. Victor stood in the middle of the open space. He was a big man with a shaved head and a snake tattoo on his neck. Next to him, tied to a chair, was Alina. Her mouth was taped shut. Her eyes were wide when she saw Alessandro. She shook her head, a desperate no. 4 of Victor's men stood around them, guns in their hands. "Alessandro, so good of you to come," Victor said, smiling. "And you brought a present." "I brought what you want," Alessandro said, holding up the bag. "The ledger, every name, every deal, everything I have. Let her go and it is yours." Victor laughed. "You are dumber than I thought. I shoot you, I take the ledger, and I keep the girl. Why would I make a deal?" "Because if I do not walk out of here with her in 10 minutes, Alessandro said, his voice echoing in the empty space, "my man David will email a copy of this ledger to the federal police. The original is useless if they already have the information. You get the original, you have control. You get the copy sent to the police, we all go to prison, including you." Victor's smile faded. He hadn't expected that. He snarled. "You are bluffing." "Am I?" Alessandro said. He looked at his watch. "You have 9 minutes now to decide. Let us go, you get the book, and the email is canceled. Kill us and you lose everything." Victor was furious. He wanted a bloody victory, not a business deal. He paced. He looked at Alina, then at the bag. Greed won. "Fine, put the bag on the floor, kick it over here." "Untie her first," Alessandro said. "Let her walk to me." Victor nodded to one of his men. The man cut the ropes on Alina's hands and feet and ripped the tape from her mouth. She gasped and stood up, her legs wobbly. "Walk to him, slow," Victor ordered. Alina walked toward Alessandro. Her eyes were locked on his. When she was close, he reached out and pulled her behind him, shielding her with his body. "Now the book," Victor demanded. Alessandro placed the bag on the floor and kicked it. It slid across the concrete, stopping at Victor's feet. One of Victor's men picked it up and handed it to him. Victor opened it, his eyes scanning the pages. A nasty smile spread across his face. He had one. "Now call off your dog," Victor said. "Cancel the email." Alessandro took out his phone. He made a show of typing. He sent a text that said, "Stand down." He showed the screen to Victor. "It is done. We are leaving." "Get out of my sight," Victor said, already engrossed in the ledger. He thought he held all the power now. Alessandro kept Alina behind him. They walked backwards toward the warehouse door. His heart was pounding. The plan was only half done. They reached the door. Alessandro pushed Alina through it. "Run to the car now," he yelled. As they burst outside, everything happened at once. Victor inside shouted in rage. "This is empty. Most of the pages are blank. It's a trick." The ledger was a decoy. Only the first few pages had real information. The rest was blank paper. Alessandro had bought them a few seconds, that was all. Gunshots erupted from inside the warehouse. Victor and his men ran for the door. But Alessandro's men were ready. Mark, Daniel, and James had been hiding outside in the shadows of the dock. As Victor's men came out, they opened fire. It was not a war. It was an ambush. Alessandro shoved Alina into the back of his armored car. "Stay down," he yelled. He turned to join the fight. But Victor was smart. He didn't come out the front. He slipped out a side door, and he saw Alina in the car. While Alessandro and his men were shooting at Victor's men from the front, Victor ran around the back of the cars. He yanked open the car door where Alina was hiding. Alina screamed. Alessandro heard it. He turned and saw Victor pulling Alina from the car, using her as a human shield, a gun to her head. "Alessandro, drop your gun or I paint the sidewalk with her brains," Victor screamed. The shooting stopped. Everyone froze. Alessandro stood in the open. He looked at Alina. Her face was white with terror. He dropped his gun. It clattered on the wet pavement. "Good," Victor hissed. "Now here is what is going to happen. You are going to get in that car and drive away. You leave the city, you leave everything. And I keep this pretty flower to make sure you never come back. If you ever show your face again, she dies slowly. You understand?" Alessandro understood. It was the worst choice. Lose Alina or die here with her and let Victor win anyway. Alina looked at Alessandro. Tears streamed down her face. But then she did something. She stopped struggling. She went very still. She looked right at Alessandro and she gave a tiny, almost invisible nod. Then she looked down at Victor's arm wrapped around her chest. Alessandro saw it. He saw her meaning. The garden, the thorns. He remembered the day she planted the rose bush. She had said, "You must hold it firmly but not too tight, and always mind the thorns." Alina took a deep breath, and then she slammed her head back as hard as she could. It hit Victor's nose with a sickening crunch. At the exact same moment, she grabbed the arm holding the gun and bit down on his hand like a wild animal. Victor yelled in pain and surprise. His grip loosened for just a second. That was all Alessandro needed. He didn't go for his gun on the ground. He charged. He was on Victor in 2 strides. He grabbed Victor's gun hand and twisted it up and away from Alina. The gun went off, the shot firing harmlessly into the air. Alina scrambled free and fell to the ground. Now it was just Alessandro and Victor. A fist fight, no guns, just 2 men and all their hate. Victor was bigger, but Alessandro had more to lose. Every punch was for Alina, for his mother's garden, for the peace he had found. He fought with a fury that shocked even his own men. Victor got in a good punch. Alessandro's lips split. He tasted blood, but he didn't stop. He grabbed Victor and threw him against the side of the car. Then he hit him, again and again. Finally, Victor slumped to the ground, unconscious. Alessandro stood over him, breathing hard. He looked at Mark. Mark understood. He picked up Alessandro's gun from the ground and handed it to him. Alessandro took the gun. He pointed it at Victor's head. This was the way of his world. You eliminated the threat, permanently. He heard a soft voice behind him. Alessandro. He turned. Elena was standing there. Her face was bruised, but her eyes were clear. She was looking at him, not at Victor. Don't, she whispered. Please, not for me. Don't let him make you into this. Not tonight. Alessandro's hand shook. The gun felt heavy. Killing Victor was the right thing, the safe thing, the Mafia thing. But Elena's eyes were the garden in the moonlight. They were peace. They were the future. He lowered the gun. He walked away from Victor. He went to Elena. He pulled her into his arms and held her so tight he thought he might break her, but she held him just as tight. Take him, Alessandro said to his men, his voice hoarse. Tie him up. We'll give him and his ledger to the police. Let the courts have him. We are done here. It was over. Weeks later, the mansion was quiet. The police had Victor. He would go to jail for a long time based on the real pages from the ledger and his own men's testimonies. Alessandro's business was changing. He was selling off the illegal parts. It would take time, but he was done with the old life. The garden was in full bloom. Elena's forget-me-nots were a sea of tiny blue flowers. The roses were red and perfect. The fountain was on, water sparkling in the sun. Alessandro and Elena were sitting on the stone bench. Her head was on his shoulder. What you did that night, Alessandro said. The headbutt, the bite, where did you learn that? Elena smiled. I did not. I was just very, very angry, and I remembered what you said about thorns. Even soft things have ways to fight. Alessandro laughed. He kissed the top of her head. My fierce little gardener. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small, velvet box. He got down on one knee right there in the dirt. Elena's hands flew to her mouth. Elena, he said, you did not just heal my garden, you healed me. You brought me back to life. I do not want to be the Don anymore. I want to be your husband. I want to build a real life with you. Will you marry me? Tears of joy filled Elena's green eyes. She nodded. Yes, she said. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring on her finger. It was a simple, beautiful band with a small green stone, the color of new leaves. As they kissed in their garden, the past felt finally behind them. The future was not in a ledger or a mansion of stone, but in this patch of earth they had saved together. It was a simple love, a true love, and it was just beginning. A year later, the big stone mansion felt different. It was no longer just a fortress. It was a home. Sunlight streamed through the clean windows. The smell of fresh bread and flowers filled the hallways instead of cigar smoke and tension. The garden was the heart of it all. It was no longer a sad, forgotten place. It was bursting with color and life. Roses climbed the trellises. Herbs grew in neat boxes by the kitchen door. Fruit trees heavy with peaches and plums stood where there used to be only weeds. In the very center, a new greenhouse made of glass sparkled in the sun. Inside the greenhouse, Elena was working. Her hands were dirty, her hair tied up in a messy bun. She was humming. Next to her, in a special raised bed, tiny green seedlings were pushing through the soil. The door opened and Alessandro walked in. He wasn't wearing one of his sharp, dark suits. He wore simple trousers and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. His face was relaxed. The hard lines of worry were gone. He was smiling. There you are, he said, his voice warm. He walked over and wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. I've been looking for my wife. Elena leaned back into him. I'm just checking on our new project, she said, pointing to the seedlings. Our project, Alessandro repeated softly. He looked at the little green plants with wonder. He still couldn't believe this was his life. A lot had changed in a year. After the night at the docks, Alessandro kept his word. He met with the federal police. He gave them the real ledger, the one with all the information. In exchange for his full cooperation and testimony, he was granted immunity for his past crimes. It was a risky deal, but it worked. Victa and many of his men were now in prison, facing very long sentences. Alessandro officially retired from his life as the Don. He sold off the illegal businesses, the gambling, the protection rackets. He kept the legitimate ones, a few restaurants, a construction company, some real estate. His men, like David, James, and Mark, were given choices. Some left for a quieter life. Others, like Mark, stayed on to run the new, clean businesses. The world of bullets and blood was behind them. The wedding had been small and perfect. Just them, a few of his most trusted men and their families, and Lucy the cook, who cried through the whole ceremony. They got married right there in the garden, under an arch covered with white roses that Alina had grown herself. Now they were building their future, together. "Lucy says dinner is almost ready," Alessandro said, nuzzling her neck. "She made your favorite, pasta with the tomatoes from the garden." "Perfect," Alina sighed happily. She wiped her hands on her apron and turned in his arms to face him. She looked up at him, her green eyes full of love. "I have something to tell you." "Oh," he brushed a smudge of dirt from her cheek. "Did the new rose bushes arrive?" "Better," she said. She took his hand and placed it gently on her stomach. "Our new project. It's not just in the greenhouse anymore, Alessandro." For a moment, he didn't understand. He looked from her smiling face down to her stomach, and then back to her eyes. His own eyes went wide. The meaning of her words hit him like a warm wave. "Elena, are you?" His voice was a whisper, full of awe. She nodded, tears of happiness glistening in her eyes. "Yes, the doctor confirmed it this morning. We're going to have a baby." Alessandro felt a joy so powerful it stole his breath. He pulled her into a tight embrace, lifting her off her feet and spinning her gently in the middle of the greenhouse, surrounded by all the life they had created together. He laughed, a sound of pure, unguarded happiness. When he put her down, he had tears in his own eyes. He cradled her face in his hands. "A baby," he breathed. "Our child, growing here in our home in our garden." "He or she will have the best garden to play in," Alina said, laughing through her tears. "And the safest home," Alessandro promised, his voice thick with emotion. "A home full of love, not fear." They stood there for a long time, holding each other amidst the plants, the future stretching out before them, bright and full of promise. That evening, they ate dinner at the big dining table. They didn't sit at opposite ends anymore. They sat right next to each other. They talked and laughed. They planned the nursery. They argued playfully about names. Later, as the sun set, painting the sky in colors of orange and pink, they walked in their garden. Alessandro's arm was around Alina's shoulders, her head resting against him. He looked at the mansion, then at the woman beside him, and finally at her stomach where their future slept. He thought of the man he used to be, the numb, lonely Don in a fortress of stone. He thought of the scared, abandoned woman who had been dumped on his doorstep. They had saved each other. She had taught him that even the hardest ground could bloom again if given care and patience. He had given her a sanctuary where her strength could take root and grow. It was not a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. It was messy, and it was hard-won. It was built on trust, choice, and the simple, daily act of tending to what you love. He stopped walking and turned to face her. He kissed her gently. "I love you, Alina," he said, "more than all the gardens in the world." "I love you, Alessandro," she whispered back. "My husband, the father of my child." They stood together in the twilight, in the garden they had built from weeds and ruin. The story of the Mafia boss and the mail-order bride was over. Now, it was simply the story of Alessandro and Alina, and it was just beginning. Thank you for joining Alessandro and Alina's journey. Did this story of thorns and true love make your heart race? Did you believe in their happy ending? Tell us where you're watching from and subscribe for more tailies where danger meets destiny.